Will Smith, Fall, Judgment, and the Long Road Back. Can a single moment erase a lifetime of achievement? Or does society now demand perfection from people we once admired precisely because they felt human? For decades, Will Smith represented something rare in Hollywood: consistency. He was dependable, likable, aspirational. A performer parents trusted, studios relied on, and audiences rooted for. From rap music to sitcoms, from summer blockbusters to Oscar-worthy drama, Smith didn't just succeed, he endured. He felt permanent. And then, in less than 10 seconds, it all unraveled. Today, many still ask the same question: is Will Smith finished? Or is his story actually a mirror, reflecting something uncomfortable about modern culture, celebrity, masculinity, and forgiveness? To understand the impact of what happened, we first need to understand who Will Smith was before the world turned on him, and why the fall felt so seismic. The night that changed everything. March 27, 2022. The Academy Awards. Hollywood's most polished stage. The Dolby Theater shimmered under bright, calculated lighting. Diamonds flashed. Designers were named. Publicists hovered like quiet sentinels. The room was full of winners long before the envelopes were opened. Will Smith sat in the audience, nominated for Best Actor for King Richard, a role that showcased maturity, restraint, and emotional depth. He played Richard Williams not as a caricature, but as a layered father, ambitious, flawed, protective, relentless. Critics called it career-defining. Many believed the Oscar was inevitable. For years, Smith had chased that golden statue. He had been nominated before. He had come close. This time felt different. This time felt earned. Then Chris Rock walked on stage. Rock, sharp and irreverent as always, delivered a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's shaved head, comparing her to G.I. Jane. In another context, it might have been dismissed as mild. But Jada has publicly spoken about her struggle with alopecia, an autoimmune condition that causes hair loss. The shaved head was not a fashion statement, it was vulnerability made visible. Cameras caught Jada's expression. Tight, wounded. Will laughed at first. Or perhaps it was reflex. Or discomfort. Or confusion. The split-second ambiguity would later be analyzed frame by frame. Then something shifted. Will stood up, walked to the stage, and struck Chris Rock across the face. The sound echoed. Rock staggered but stayed upright. Smith returned to his seat and shouted words that would be censored for television but immortalized online. For a moment, the audience froze. Was it staged? Was it performance art? A bit gone wrong? Within seconds, the answer was obvious. And with that single act, a career built over 30 years entered free fall. Less than an hour later, Smith accepted the Oscar he had chased for decades. His speech was emotional, conflicted, and widely criticized. He spoke about love, protection, and family. He compared himself to the fiercely protective father he had portrayed. He cried. He apologized to the Academy, but not directly to Chris Rock. The applause felt strained. Instead of being remembered for his performance, Will Smith became defined by an act of violence, broadcast live, replayed endlessly, dissected mercilessly. So here's the first hard question. When someone reaches the pinnacle of success and falls publicly, do we want accountability or destruction? Why the slap hit so hard? This wasn't just about bad behavior. It was about broken expectations. Will Smith wasn't known for volatility. He wasn't infamous for scandal. His brand was positivity, discipline, and control. For decades, he seemed immune to the chaos that often trails fame. He wasn't the tortured genius. He wasn't the rebellious anti-hero. He was the smiling achiever, the kid from West Philadelphia who made it without imploding. That's why the slap landed like an earthquake. It shattered an image carefully built since the early 1990s, an image of balance, professionalism, and emotional intelligence. And once the image cracked, everything else rushed in. Old interviews resurfaced. Marital struggles were re-examined. The entanglement headlines returned. Critics who once praised him now questioned his authenticity. Had the positivity been performance? Had the discipline been repression? Was the slap an isolated mistake, or the eruption of something long suppressed? When someone you admire fails publicly, does it hurt because of the act, or because it exposes how fragile your image of them was? The rise before the fall. Will Smith's story once felt almost mythic. Raised in West Philadelphia, he was charismatic from childhood, quick with humor, sharper with observation. Teachers reportedly nicknamed him Prince because of his ability to charm his way out of trouble. That nickname would later become a brand. His early success came through music. As half of DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, he helped pioneer a playful, radio-friendly style of hip-hop. Their Grammy win for Parents Just Don't Understand signaled something new. Rap could be mainstream without losing identity. But music was only the opening act. When financial trouble hit, mismanaged money, unpaid taxes, Smith pivoted. The opportunity came through television. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air wasn't just a sitcom. It was cultural architecture. It blended humor with commentary on race, class, and belonging. It allowed Smith to play a heightened version of himself, street-smart yet vulnerable, comedic yet capable of depth. One episode in particular, where Will's absent father briefly returns, only to leave again, showcased an emotional range few expected. "How come he don't want me?" he cried in Uncle Phil's arms. The line lingered for decades. Behind the scenes, Smith was ambitious, strategic even. He studied box office trends. He analyzed global markets. He wanted to be the biggest movie star in the world. And astonishingly, he became exactly that. Bad Boys, Independence Day, Men in Black. Each film reinforced his brand: charming hero, quick wit, moral center. He could fight aliens and still feel relatable. He could save the world and still crack a joke. By the 2000s, a Will Smith movie was shorthand for bankability. He delivered record-breaking openings across continents. He was one of the few black actors to command global blockbuster status consistently. And then came the pivot toward prestige. Ali. The Pursuit of Happiness. 7 pounds. These weren't just roles, they were statements. He wanted critical respect, not just ticket sales. He wanted to be taken seriously. So when the slap happened, it wasn't merely a celebrity misstep, it felt like a narrative betrayal. The disciplined achiever had acted impulsively. The global diplomat had lost control. The immediate fallout. The response was swift and unforgiving. Social media exploded within minutes. Memes appeared before the ceremony ended. Commentary drowned nuance. Opinions hardened fast. Within days, Will Smith issued a public apology, calling his actions unacceptable and apologizing directly to Chris Rock. It was measured. It acknowledged wrongdoing. It emphasized remorse. For some, it was sincere. For others, it was strategic. The Academy launched an internal review and delivered its verdict: a 10-year ban from all Academy events. Not expulsion, but exile. Meanwhile, the industry moved quietly, but decisively. Projects stalled. Films were shelved. Meetings cooled. A completed film, Emancipation, received minimal promotional push. Upcoming productions vanished from headlines. Hollywood didn't need dramatic announcements. The message was clear: Will Smith had become a liability. And in an industry built on image, liability spreads fast. When judgment becomes viral, is redemption still possible? When judgment becomes isolation. What followed wasn't prison or legal consequence, but something arguably more destabilizing for a public figure: silence. The spotlight that once amplified his every move now magnified absence. Smith retreated from public view. Appearances became rare. Social media quieted. For someone whose brand thrived on connection and charisma, the withdrawal felt stark. But what happens to a person whose identity has long been intertwined with applause, when the applause stops? Fame distorts self-perception. It cushions. It amplifies. It creates echo chambers of approval. When that echo turns to condemnation, the psychological shift can be brutal. Reports described him as reflective, introspective. He traveled. He reportedly sought spiritual counsel. He faced not only public anger, but private reckoning. What does it mean to confront a mistake that millions witnessed? How do you separate who you are from what you did? The slap was 10 seconds. The fallout was months, then years. And in that quiet space, a new question emerged. Was this the end, or the beginning of a different version of Will Smith? The complexity of protection and pride. Much of Smith's explanation centered on protection, of his wife, of dignity, of boundaries. But protection and pride can blur. Throughout his career, Smith cultivated an image of strength balanced with warmth. But masculinity, especially in public life, is a fragile performance. It's often tied to perception, to reputation, to dominance. Did he feel he had failed to protect before? Was the slap less about that moment and more about accumulated pressure? In previous years, his marriage had been dissected publicly. Jada's candid discussions about their relationship, particularly the entanglement episode, became viral talking points. Memes painted him as humiliated, diminished. Public mockery lingers. Did that pressure build quietly behind the smile? None of this excuses the act. But it complicates it. Human behavior rarely erupts in isolation. It simmers. It layers. And when it spills over, the world sees only the explosion, not the accumulation. Emancipation and the attempted return. When Emancipation was released, it carried weight beyond its storyline. The film itself, centered on a man escaping slavery, explored resilience, brutality, survival. But audiences watched with layered perception. Can you separate art from artist? Should you? Smith promoted the film carefully. He spoke about growth, accountability, and the work of self-examination. His tone was subdued, less charismatic showman, more reflective man. Some critics acknowledged the performance. Others admitted difficulty separating it from the Oscars incident. Box office numbers were modest. The film did not become a cultural event. But perhaps that was never the point. Perhaps the real narrative wasn't about immediate comeback, but long-term rebuilding. The public's role in redemption. We often say we believe in second chances. But do we mean it? Cancel culture is a blunt term, often weaponized, often oversimplified. Yet there is truth in the speed of collective judgment. Social media compresses outrage into spectacle. Mistakes become identity. Will Smith became the man who slapped Chris Rock. 30 years reduced to 10 seconds. Is that fair? Fairness, however, is not the currency of virality. The public's relationship with celebrities is transactional. We elevate. We project. We consume. And when disappointment strikes, we withdraw. But redemption requires something uncomfortable: time. It requires watching someone rebuild slowly, without guarantees. Are we patient enough for that? Signs of a gradual shift. Over time, something subtle began to change. Public appearances resumed cautiously. Interviews became more introspective. The bombastic confidence softened into measured humility. In 2023 and beyond, discussions about potential sequels and new projects resurfaced. Studios, ever pragmatic, reconsidered risk versus reward. Audiences, gradually, shifted attention to newer scandals. Time does what outrage cannot. It dilutes intensity. But dilution is not forgiveness. Forgiveness, if it comes, is quieter. It's visible not in headlines, but in sustained opportunity. Will Smith's journey now hinges less on apology and more on consistency. On demonstrating that the moment was deviation, not definition. The larger cultural mirror. Perhaps the most compelling question isn't about Will Smith at all. It's about us. Why do we build celebrities into symbols of moral certainty? Why do we react so strongly when they behave like flawed humans? We say we value authenticity. Yet when authenticity includes anger, imperfection, or breakdown, we recoil. We say we believe in mental health conversations. Yet when someone visibly cracks under pressure, we often reduce it to memes. What does that contradiction reveal? Will Smith's fall forces confrontation with uncomfortable realities about fame, masculinity, race, marriage, and public expectation. Would the reaction have been different if he were another kind of star? Another race? Another personality? These questions don't erase responsibility, but they expand the lens. The long road back. Reputation, once fractured, doesn't snap back into place. It reforms slowly, if at all. The road back for Will Smith is not paved with dramatic speeches or instant hits. It is built through quiet reliability, through roles chosen carefully, through interviews that reveal growth without defensiveness. He may never fully reclaim the untouchable image he once held. But perhaps that image was never sustainable. Perhaps the version of Will Smith emerging now, less polished, more human, is the only authentic one. And maybe that's the deeper lesson. When we watch someone fall publicly, we often look for closure. A clean ending. A verdict. But life rarely provides those. Will Smith is not finished. Nor is he restored. He exists in the in-between, where most people live, just without cameras. And maybe that's why his story still holds attention. Because beneath the celebrity, beneath the scandal, beneath the applause and the criticism, there is a universal truth. Everyone is one moment away from being misunderstood. Everyone is one mistake away from reinvention. The question is not whether Will Smith can recover. The real question is this. Are we willing to let him? Invitations stopped. Collaborations dried up. Public appearances vanished. Once familiar red carpets began to feel like minefields. Studio executives who had greeted his calls with enthusiasm now answered sporadically, their voices clipped and cautious. In his home, a house that had been a place of laughter, music, and empire building, the laughter dimmed. The rooms, previously brimming with photographs and trophies, seemed to lean into the silence. Social media, once his strength, turned hostile. Every post became a referendum on the slap. Every attempt to move forward reopened the wound. A clip shared 1,000 times is not the same as a full life, yet clips have power. Within hours, gestures, jokes, and achievements were folded into a single frame. Fans who had once defended him online now felt embarrassed, betrayed, or simply weary. Critics sharpened their pens. Memes multiplied into a cultural diagnosis. And the scrutiny expanded beyond the incident. Past interviews resurfaced. Personal moments were reinterpreted. His marriage, already unconventional, became public spectacle. Conversations that had been intimate suddenly belonged to strangers. For years, Jada Pinkett Smith had openly discussed their relationship struggles. The public watched Will sit uncomfortably through revelations that many believed should have remained private. He watched too, not as a distant observer but as a man with memory bruised by both truth and exposure. Some began to reframe the slap not as spontaneous rage, but as accumulated humiliation finally exploding. That reinterpretation didn't excuse the act, it complicated it. It asked uncomfortable questions about performance, masculinity, and the duty to oneself versus the duty to others. When does private sorrow calcify into public spectacle? Who bears responsibility for the narrative once it leaks? Which raises another uncomfortable question. When personal pain becomes public entertainment, where does responsibility truly lie? The cost to legacy. Perhaps the most devastating consequence wasn't professional, it was historical. Before 2022, Will Smith's legacy was clear. A multi-decade entertainer who broke barriers, inspired millions, and mastered multiple industries. After 2022, his name became shorthand for one moment. It didn't matter how many films he made, how many records he sold, how many people he inspired. The slap overshadowed everything. In the digital age, context collapses. Careers are compressed into clips. Nuance is replaced by repetition. A museum display that once would show decades of work now risks being reduced to a single artifact. And once an image hardens online, reversing it becomes nearly impossible. Can a lifetime of work withstand the force of a single looping GIF? Redemption or cancellation? Here's where the story becomes bigger than Will Smith. His situation sits at the crossroads of modern accountability and cancel culture. On one side, he committed assault. Publicly. On live television. There must be consequences. On the other, he apologized. He accepted punishment. He stepped back. What more is required? If accountability means permanent exile, then redemption no longer exists. And if redemption doesn't exist, what incentive does society leave for growth? History offers no consistent answer. Some figures return. Some never recover. The rules are unclear and unevenly applied. Which leads to a question many quietly ask but rarely say aloud. Are consequences applied equally or selectively? A complicated return. Despite the backlash, Will Smith didn't disappear forever. He turned inward. Therapy. Meditation. Long stretches away from the spotlight. He learned the quiet choreography of confession, how to speak about harm without performing for headlines. In a small, sunlit therapy room, he sat across from someone who asked the questions the world would not. What did it feel like to be humiliated? What did you want in that moment? What would you do differently? Eventually, he returned, not with a blockbuster first, but with music. For the first time in decades, he released an album rooted in vulnerability rather than bravado. The lyrics addressed failure, fear, and accountability head-on. Songs that might once have been radio-ready as bravura now played like journal entries. He toured in small venues at first, modest theaters and college auditoriums, spaces built for conversation as much as performance. He listened to the audience as they listened to him. Audience members who had come to see the star found themselves leaning in. No denial. No deflection. Then came Bad Boys, Ride or Die. Against expectations, it succeeded, earning hundreds of millions worldwide. It wasn't a coronation, but it was proof. Audiences hadn't completely walked away. Slowly, cautiously, Smith began rebuilding, not the Fresh Prince, not the invincible star, but something more human. He didn't try to erase the past. Instead, he folded it into a new kind of narrative, one that acknowledged failure and insisted on laboring through repair. He mentored younger actors privately, donated to causes quietly, and showed up at community centers to speak about temper and responsibility. He learned to make amends not as performance but as practice. Where things stand now, Will Smith's career isn't what it was. It may never be. But it isn't over. He performs. He records. He engages with communities. He speaks openly about mistakes. He measures impact in quieter, private acts. He no longer chases universal approval, and perhaps that's the point. Hollywood hasn't fully welcomed him back. But neither has it erased him. He exists in the uncomfortable middle ground between forgiveness and consequence. Final questions. So where does this leave us? Is Will Smith a cautionary tale, or proof that no one is beyond redemption? Does accountability require lifelong punishment, or meaningful change? And when we judge public figures, are we seeking justice, or satisfaction? When we elevate people to icons, do we also create a hunger for spectacle when they fall? When someone's life becomes shorthand for a moment, can we reclaim the fuller story? Perhaps the real lesson isn't about Will Smith at all. Perhaps it's about how quickly we elevate people, and how eagerly we tear them down. And the most important question of all, when someone falls in front of the entire world, do we allow them to stand back up? He keeps trying still.